Welcome to Knife Thoughts. This video is going to be both a full review and a comparison and also a reassembly of the Axial Shift V3. So this is the new version of the Axial Shift, their kind of flagship out the front automatic knife for 2024 here. A new take on it, a new version with some upgrades, and it's been kind of a saga from me for making this full review. I did do an unboxing, but then I decided to do something very stupid. So Axial sent a Tonto Magna Cut shift, and you can see on the blade that this is not Magna Cut. And I was working in my garden digging up garlic, and I just don't know what got into me, but I decided to use my shift in Magna Cut to basically pry up or dig up a bulb of garlic. And it actually worked a few times, and so I was like, seems like it's working all right. And then it snapped off, and pretty close to the very, base of the blade, kind of right in here. So that was real dumb. I strongly suggest against using your knife, any folding knife, and really any knife at all, to dig up garlic or pry or dig anything up. So that was real dumb. As someone who's very familiar with knives, I really don't know what was going through my head, but it happened. So it was actually on the day of the release of these getting released officially to the public. And so I was like, oh no, I better buy one to be able to do a full review, because I had only done an unboxing so far at that point. And by the time I got to it, they had already sold out of the Magna Cut. So I bought this one in S35 VN, which of course S35 VN is a great steel, no problem with it, but I do, appreciate Magna Cut, and was hoping to get that. But of course the Magna Cut version sold out very quickly. So I bought this one and have carried and used it since then. But Axial was kind enough to replace the blade on the one that I broke. So I sent my knife in. They had some double-edged S35 VN blades left over, so they replaced that. And this is that knife here. So first of all, great service there. It cost $80 to get the blade replaced, which I think is super fair, especially considering that it was 100% misuse. Definitely my fault, not a warranty thing. So I was really happy with that. I've always had great service, great experiences dealing with Axial. But I got this knife and I decided that I was going to do a disassembly and reassembly video to show some of the upgrades that this knife has over previous versions of the Shift. And partly because I had asked, for details on, in particular, what they call the hammer lock, and hadn't really heard anything. And I still haven't. I've asked about it some, but just haven't really gotten specifics on it. And I think it might be because it's something they're working on patenting. I'm not real sure, but I wanted to take a look at that and, give you a better look at what the differences actually are mechanically, not just aesthetically, which there are definitely aesthetic differences. I touched on those in my unboxing, and I will touch on them again here. But there are some mechanical differences also. And then when I took it apart, I lost, at first, I lost both one of these locking bars and the spring, and then I found that and was doing the video, or trying to do the video, and lost one of the springs. So I then said, I feel really silly, but said to Axial, could you guys, could I buy one of those springs? So got 2 replacement springs, and finally am able to put this knife together, hopefully on video for you. But first of all, I want to talk about those mechanical differences. So it has the glide button system and the hammer lock. So the glide button system is something that you see on some high-end American-made, typically out the front knives, like Guardian Tactical and others like that. And basically it is a steel insert that's put in under the actuator, which you'll see, better when I put it together, that makes it so that it's not wearing against the aluminum. So the actuator here goes along this on those two kind of tracks, rather than being the full flat against full flat. And you can see that there's also a steel kind of runner there. I don't know if that's what you call that, but it slides steel on steel, so it keeps it nice and smooth and kind of keeps the wear down on it. So that's that glide system, and it's something I do like. I'll talk about the action once I get it together here. But the other thing is the hammer lock. And so this is what I didn't really get a much answer on what the difference is, but going by the visual difference of the blade here, I can make some assumptions. So first of all, this, I'm not going to take the blade the whole way out. I haven't taken it the whole way out. I think you have to take both of the locks out, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, this large kind of cutout here is what I think the difference is. When you have the knife open, so you can see it here, you can actually see that. So there's that large kind of radius, and I'll show you as compared to the previous Shift. So this is the Shift V2. You can see that you don't have that. There is not that large radius, and it's not something that you have on other out the front knives, like for example Microtech. It's not something you'll see on an Ultratech. So I think that is the difference. And my conjecture, again, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a knife designer, but my conjecture is that what it does is allows for a little bit more of kind of automatic adjustment. When these lock bars go into those holes, it can kind of adjust a little bit more itself in that wider radius. But again, that's really just my conjecture. It's not something that I am sure of in any way. Just kind of what I'm guessing is the difference with the hammer lock there. So let's put this thing together, hopefully, and try not to lose any parts while I do it. And first of all, I want to say that I highly suggest not taking these apart. I strongly suggest not taking it apart. And that is because it just is so likely that something, that you don't want to have happen happens. A spring goes flying or something along those lines. And I just don't think it's worth it. I think that, you're really not gaining much by taking it apart. Some people just want to see the mechanism, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can see I'm already probably messing this up, but there's nothing wrong with wanting to see the mechanism of a knife, certainly. I get that, but it's just really likely, I would say, that you do end up losing something or messing something up, which I hopefully will not do for a third time or something here. So all right, we got that kind of in, and then I'm not going to edit this part out because I want you to see how difficult this is. Actually, just kidding. That did not go well. I actually lost another one of the lock bar springs and had a lot of trouble getting it together. And it ended up taking about 15 minutes. And I am not going to subject you to that. So instead, here I have sped it up to just under a minute. And you can see how much I am struggling. It was definitely a hard-fought battle, but I did end up getting it together and working correctly after a while. So I again do not recommend taking out the front knives apart if you don't absolutely need to. This is not an issue with axial knives. It is something that I think is true for all out the front knives. Okay, so moving on to the knife itself, the aesthetics, and the quality, past the mechanical differences and into the aesthetic differences from the previous shifts first. So first of all, there's a pretty big change in the aesthetic, in my opinion. It keeps the overall shape of the previous versions of the shift. There's actually kind of one version between this one, the second, and this one, the third. Just a kind of an inlay version, slight differences, but these two were really similar, mostly changing the shape of the butt of the handle, as you can see, and then making the clip reversible. And then a good number of changes aesthetically. So the first thing that I noticed is the change in the screws. So the third version of the shift here uses these kind of round head screws and are on both sides of the handles, whereas the previous shifts only had the screws on the clip side, so they were kind of hidden, particularly if you're holding it in your hand and looking at it like so. And they were recessed, so you couldn't really feel them. And to be completely honest, when I first got this version of the shift, it was something that I wasn't really, sure about. I wasn't really a big fan of. You can definitely feel them in your hand when you're opening and closing the knife. But after having it and carrying it and using it, I don't think that it's a huge deal, ergonomics wise. It's not like these are going to really cause any major issues, especially for most people that have this knife, myself included, who are not doing heavy cutting with it, right? It's something that you enjoy having and carrying and using and opening and closing, and you use it relatively occasionally. I don't even think if you're using it constantly that it's going to be a huge issue, but anyway, it didn't cause any real hot spots or anything like that for me. Now, aesthetically, it definitely looks more industrial, I would say. I've always said that the shift is a really cool looking out the front. It's kind of sleek, futuristic looking. And overall, this version 3, I think, changes that. It still has a futuristic look, but to me, it's much more industrial futuristic. And so the reason for that is, again, you see these big kind of standing out screws. They really kind of assert themselves into the look of the knife. And then also this milling here, which is different. The previous shifts didn't have any milling on the kind of front face of the handle. The milling was recessed into the sides, which you still have some side recessed milling here for sure. But then you also have this, and it looks kind of like tread or track that is put into, like factory, the metal on a factory floor to make it, have more traction to it, at least to me. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but it's good. It's knife thoughts, right? And then another change is, well, I want to continue with the screws real quick. So in the unboxing, I mentioned how these screws, on the other hand, are actually kind of the same as the previous screws used on the shift for this pocket clip filler tab. And so it makes it so that they stick out. And it's something that I actually, for a while, took them off and just used it without the filler tab, and I think that that's a fine option also. But the other thing is they do, give you a little bit of traction to help pull the knife out of your pocket. So while, you can kind of feel them when you're pulling them out of your pocket, that also means that they give you a little bit of traction to help pull the knife out of your pocket. So I think that it would be better if it had the same type screws, those round heads. Just, you would still get some traction and it would keep the same aesthetic, but it's not as big of a deal as I think I first initially felt like it was. Then the other difference here is the clip. The clip is very different. So you can see that both the first version and the second version of the shift had these bent pocket clips. This is a milled pocket clip, and I think it both looks better, and honestly, I think it was easier to slide in and out of the pocket. So you get maybe a little bit easier of a ramp, whereas this, if you have a thicker pocket, it can catch on it. So I do like this clip, but I think it continues with the more industrial look to the knife. So overall, I think still a futuristic looking knife, but more industrial, less sleek than the originals. And then one other thing that I did want to mention that I kind of missed is the Axial logo on the handle, because I really like this logo. I think it's a really, really cool looking logo, and so I would have loved to have seen it here, but I think the reason that it's not there is because they also offered a version with inlays, so like a G10 inlay right here, and so that would be covered up on the inlay version. But maybe they could put it like here, you know, down near the clip or something like that. But I do really like the Axial logo. So moving on to the quality, Axial makes a great out the front knife. Man, I am struggling with this one. Axial makes a great out the front knife. So this is the one that I didn't take apart, and even this one that I just, you know, struggled to put back together still has really nice action, and that's without oiling it or anything. The action on these shifts, I would say, rivals, if not, is a little bit better than my Microtech Ultratech, if only in the fact that it's easier to actuate the shifts. The Microtech is pretty tough to actuate. And, you know, I'm sure people say, oh, you know, girly hands get stronger hands. And, you know, maybe that's true. I don't know. I don't care. I, you know, think that my grip strength is pretty strong and stuff. I use my hands to grip as part of the martial art that I teach and stuff, but it doesn't really matter, because for me, the Microtech Ultratech's a little hard to actuate, and the shift, particularly with the glide system here, is easier. It feels smoother and like less resistance. There's still certainly resistance. It's not as easy as, say, like a Microtech so people told me that I pronounced that wrong, and I'm sure that I did, but I don't know. But it's not quite as easy as the Axial Dart, which is a much smaller, you know, knife, but it still feels better to me than the Microtech, and also than this is a TacRay, or I'm sorry, not TacRay, TacCom knife here that also has really nice action, but it's pretty, you know, tough to actuate. So I do like that a lot. I think, honestly, I wish it was easier to actuate. I don't think you're going to accidentally actuate an out the front in your pocket that easily. So if it was a little easier to actuate, I think it would make it a little more fun to use. And actually, this one feels, maybe it's a little easier now that I took it apart and put it back together. But it is nice action, and it snaps out very hard, and there's very little place. So you can see you're going to have this, but the forward and back and the side to side, there's very little, very, very little side to side. Definitely some forward and back, but again, I would say that it's a competitor for the Microtech. In fact, I think that at least this double-edged one, it has less side to side for sure. I mean, I wrenched down on it pretty hard when I was putting it back together there, but about the same forward and back, maybe, yeah, about the same, but less side to side. And let's take a look at the Tonto. I would say the Tonto has about the same as the Ultratech. So I don't know if I could wrench down on this and make it have less, but I think it's great lockup. And especially because, you know, at $220, first of all, that's before my discount code, which is Knife Thoughts. So make sure you use the discount code Knife Thoughts if you buy one when they become available. But that's before that discount code, and it's much less than a Microtech Ultratech. I mean, this knife is a blem, or a grenade, whatever they call it. So it was less, but I think it would normally be like 300 or 300 and some. So, you know, you're paying a good bit less. And they are American made, and I really think that even though they took a little bit of a hiatus maybe from releasing knives, they were just working in the background, and I'm super happy to see them releasing out the front knives again. I'm hoping to see some manual folding knives from them. They did a trainer butterfly. I just don't have a whole lot of use for a training butterfly knife. I'm not good with them, but I love getting to check out these out the fronts, and I'm hoping to see more from Axial soon. I remember they had some really, really cool ideas that haven't come to fruition yet, so I'm hoping they do, and I've really enjoyed getting to check these out. I think that they've got classic blade shapes, a really nice Tonto with a relatively tall grind for an out the front knife, so cuts pretty well. The double edge is a classic, you know, double edge knife, so it doesn't have quite as thin a grind, but you know, you get 2 edges, so that's always cool. And just really nice knives for, I think, a good price for American made out the front knives. Don't take them apart like any out the front knife. The reassembly is not different on these than other out the front knives. I would have struggled just as much or more with any other out the front knife, because these you just use normal torque screws, whereas some other companies don't. So I highly recommend not taking them apart and not using them to dig things up. But I have really enjoyed getting to check these knives out and carry and use them. And if you are looking for a good American-made out the front knife for a really reasonable price, I think that the Axial Shift V3 is a great option. So make sure you use my discount code Knife Thoughts, get yourself a nice little discount, and help out the channel. And I want to thank Colby, Hunter, everyone at Axial who has, you know, sent knives along for me to review and been helpful with my mistakes with the knives, and everyone else involved there. So thank you to them. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video. Click the bell and select all so you know when I post new videos. Check out my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. And subscribe to the email newsletter. That's the best way to stay up to date with all of the latest knife thoughts. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.